Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a totally chilling story about an everyday household object that quietly but relentlessly demands a bloody, supernatural toll. Seriously, this is a fascinating look at a simple apartment renovation that goes horribly, supernaturally wrong.
I want you to imagine something for a second. You're doing some mundane kitchen renovations, right? But slowly, it starts driving you into a literal psychological nightmare. Ask yourself, how long would you dismiss it as just bad luck? Because in the source material we're looking at today, what starts as a simple, innocent home upgrade actually morphs into this inescapable, gravitational pull of violence. Let's look at how this whole thing kicks off.
Section 1. A strange new kitchen counter. The mundane arrival of an ancient evil.
So our story begins when the protagonist comes home to find that their cheap presswood counters have been replaced with these beautiful, smooth limestone slabs. Sounds great, right? But there's a weird catch. The edge has this peculiar center groove, and it's tilted so that any spilled liquid pools perfectly in the middle. Now, over the course of just a single week, a statistically impossible pattern emerges. Day 1, a snagged thumb. Day 3, bleeding gums while flossing nearby. Then a smashed mosquito, and later a random nosebleed. Every single day, through these seemingly minor everyday accidents, the protagonist's blood miraculously finds its way directly into that exact center groove.
And that leads to a really chilling realization. There's always blood on the counter. This is the exact moment the protagonist finally understands that these aren't just mere accidents anymore. There's a deliberate, hypnotic pull coming from the object itself. It isn't just catching random spills, it's actively drawing blood right out of its environment.
Section 2. The shift in reality, when the environment begins to react.
Okay, so the atmosphere in the kitchen violently shifts. Out of nowhere, a dead bird crashes straight through the kitchen window. And almost immediately, swarms of flies gather. But they aren't flying around normally. They're hovering in these random, static patterns, almost like they're anticipating the blood that the stone so desperately craves. And then, when the landlord comes over to patch up the window, he casually cuts himself on the broken glass, bleeds right onto the counter, and just brushes it off, completely undisturbed.
Section 3. The hypnotic trance. Apathy in the face of horror.
Now, the true psychological power of this counter really reveals itself during a casual late-night party hosted by the protagonist. One of the young guests accidentally shatters a wine glass directly in her bare hand. Normally, you'd expect screaming, panic, somebody rushing to call 911, right? But the observed reaction here? Total, absolute apathy. The crowd just stands around in a silent trance, peacefully watching as her blood fills that groove to the brim and drips onto the floor. Nobody cares. They're just spectators to a sacrifice. The horror escalates to an absolute extreme when the landlord returns to smooth out that groove. He's using an angle grinder, and while locked in this deep trance, he calmly slices off exactly one fingertip. He feels absolutely zero pain. He just leaves the severed tip right there on the counter for the flies, casually packs up his tools, and walks right out. Literally one finger, casually offered up to the stone.
Section 4. The Mayan altar theory. Uncovering the stone's dark history. Obviously seeking some kind of answer for this absolute madness, the protagonist falls down a massive research rabbit hole, and the terrifying truth actually lies in the material itself, limestone. It's a sedimentary rock, and in this specific case, we learn it was imported directly from Mexico. Historically, this exact material was heavily used by ancient Mayans to construct temples and, crucially, sacrificial altars. Suddenly, all the pieces are starting to fit together in a truly horrifying way.
The source text presents this profound, chilling theory. Things don't wish for things, unless they do. The whole idea here is that the limestone possesses an inclination, almost a divine leaning, to act as the sacrificial altar it was always meant to be. And the psychological toll of this peaks when the protagonist finds a dead mouse mysteriously left right on the counter. Shortly after that, he enters a trance himself and involuntarily tries to smash his own hand with an iron spike, just to appease it.
Section 5. A bloody sacrifice. The grueling battle to break the curse.
Realizing the stone is actively demanding a life, the protagonist reaches a breaking point. He decides he has to physically remove this cursed object before it literally forces him to kill himself. But to break the counter's hypnotic grip, he has to go to absolute extremes. Step 1, layer on 3 pairs of thick gloves for protection. Step 2, grab an iron spike and a hammer to use as a makeshift chisel.
And step 3, hack away at it for 9 agonizing hours. It takes a massive physical toll, leaving him with incredibly bloody, battered hands, just to finally dislodge this stone from the kitchen cabinets.
So, the protagonist calls the landlord to come haul the heavy slab away, but unfortunately, the counter isn't finished. The final escalation begins when the landlord arrives and immediately slips back into a deep trance. He effortlessly hefts this incredibly heavy stone slab, holding it up high like Moses holding a commandment. And then, in a fit of sudden, unblinking frustration, he hurls the entire stone right out the second-story window.
And here is where we reach the tragic climax. That falling limestone slab ends up crushing a passing neighbor's head against the pavement in a brutal, gruesome accident. But instead of screaming or panicking, the surrounding neighborhood gathers around in complete silence. They react with the chilling, quiet reverence of a community attending a holy sacrifice. The stone finally got the life it was demanding all along.
Section 6. Locked away in evidence. The chilling aftermath.
Following this horrific freak accident, the police arrive and naturally confiscate the blood-drenched counter, logging it as a murder weapon. But really, this marks the ultimate victory for the entity. The stone gets transported to long-term evidence storage, where it's stacked right alongside other violently used, bloody, and hateful items. In this incredible stroke of tragic irony, the authorities have unwittingly handed the evil entity exactly what it wanted from the very beginning.
As the source text puts it, sealed and unclean, forever resting among the knives and guns. Locked away in that dark evidence locker, absolutely surrounded by violent murder weapons, the altar's thirst is going to be eternally quenched by the ambient remnants of dark deeds and the literal bloodstains of history's worst crimes.
There would always be blood on the counter. So the absolute crucial point you need to take away from this explainer is the quiet, inevitable triumph of the supernatural over the mundane. The protagonist actually thought they won by removing it from their home, but the altar merely orchestrated its own relocation to a place where a steady supply of blood is practically guaranteed.
Which brings us to our final question for today. If an object absorbs the dark history of its material, what might the everyday items in your own home be quietly demanding of you? I'll leave you with this thought. The very next time you write off a streak of bad luck or a minor injury around your house, take a much closer look and ask yourself what unseen forces might really be at play here.